So we doom scroll and we want to be active, and rather than having something, let's go in and just have some quiet time.
It's uncomfortable to be still, which is mind-boggling, because then it's also uncomfortable to be constantly doing as well.
He discovered the HIV virus, but I met him and he spoke at some of these conferences on the physics, chemistry and biology of water, and he did experiments on how water can transmit information. Even Emoto's work has been marginalised and criticised. But when you talk about structured water, Gerald Pollack's work on the fourth, I was reading something a couple of days ago saying that 90% of the polyphenols, the antioxidants in the American diet, come from coffee. Because coffee is really high in polyphenols, or chocolate. Coffee or chocolate.
Welcome back to the Smarter Than Harder podcast, where we offer 1 cent solutions to your $64,000 questions. I'm back and I'm Jodi Duval, and today we're embarking on a journey through the landscapes of health and wellness with the incredibly insightful Professor Marc Cohen. So, Professor Marc Cohen is a medical doctor and professor who has been at the forefront of holistic and integrative medicine for over 3 decades. With a passion that extends from clinical practice to academia and research, Professor Cohen has pioneered the wellness space, authoring over 100 peer-reviewed papers and championing innovative health solutions. His expertise ranges from traditional spa therapies to the implementation of integrative health practices on a global scale, bringing a wealth of knowledge to today. And we had so much fun talking about ancient future medicine, bridging the health gap, integrative health approaches, water and the therapeutic power of water, and we dive quite deep into this, fermentation and food as medicine, and really that culture of wellness and community. Marc is an incredible human with an amazing amount of knowledge on so many different areas of health, wellness, and research, and is at the forefront of this himself as well. So we hope you enjoy. Buckle up for a thought-provoking ride through the past, present, and future of integrative medicine with Dr. Marc Cohen.
Okay, so I have the amazing Dr. Marc Cohen with me today, and it's an absolute pleasure to now see the man himself behind the name on all my textbooks when I was studying. So thank you for being with us, Marc.
I'm so happy to be invited. Great to be here. Thanks, Jodi.
Yeah, thank you. So we as we said, we can't, we've got a short amount of time for so much that we actually need to go through, and it probably will be 8 to 12 hours if we actually wanted to go through all this, or even more we could probably go for. But let's start, and I always like to set the scene for the audience, because I think it's really important to hear the man behind the mission. And so tell us a little bit about you, Marc, and what led you to the current place you are at now in this specialty or realm or passion. I'd really love to hear that.
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly fortunate in my life, because I've actually lived a life according to my passions. And I went into medicine 40 years ago. No, I'm getting old. 40 years ago I went into medicine with the aim of learning how I could be well, how I could have the happiest, healthiest life. And that led me on this very long, convoluted academic path. I spent 38 years at university. So doing Western medicine, I did an honours degree in physiology and psychology. I did 2 PhDs. I did a PhD in Chinese medicine. I spent 18 years as a professor at RMIT in the wellness space, where I was head of a department for a while of Chinese medicine, osteopathy, chiropractic, and I've spent a lot of time in the wellness space. All the stuff that doesn't have big corporate interests involved, but they're really fun and nurturing. So, health retreats, saunas, yoga, meditation, herbal medicine, lifestyle. That's been my focus, because I want to learn about myself. And I've been really lucky, because I've had PhD students who have been super capable people. Olympic gold medalists, Lauren Burns and Nicole Bowsman, who created the building biology industry, and the students who've worked into saunas and hot springs and meditation. So I've been supervising them in their PhDs, but I've learned a lot through that process. So I've been on this big learning quest. And it was only about 6 months ago that I actually had a name for my interest and my disciplines, because water's always been a big part of what I've done. I'm really passionate about good quality water, not just for drinking, but for bathing in. I have a commercial interest in a hot spring in New Zealand, and I'm the medical director of the Peninsula Hot Springs, which have now 5 hot springs in Victoria and New Zealand. So it's been for the last 20 years, I've been in that hot spring world, and that's a fantastic world to be in. I get to travel the world and go to hot springs and spas and resorts, and as part of my job, which is pretty wonderful. But then I've also been involved with herbal medicine. So Leslie Braun was my first PhD student. We wrote the textbook together. I mean, she's been head of the Blackmores Research Institute for the last 15 or more years. So herbal medicine's been a big part of my world. During the pandemic, I got involved with fermentation. We created a company called Extremely Alive, which are these bottles here, which is Kombucha vinegar. And then we add leaves, roots, flowers, fruits, and fungi to the vinegar, and we have these shelf-stable tonics that are balance blood sugar and have all the herbal effects, depending on the herbs we select. And recently I've been getting involved with Manuka honey and the incredible properties of Manuka honey and honey in general. And I was trying to work out what is my discipline, because it's the hot spring world is very different from the honey and the fermentation of the herbal medicine world. And then I came up with this term, ancient future medicine. And I talked about medicine that's so simple that cavemen did it.
Yes.
And it's so obvious and effective that every great medical tradition and every master physician prescribed them.
Yes.
And it's so complicated that modern science can't fully understand it.
Yeah.
But it's also so practical and easy. You can actually do it yourself at home.
Yeah.
And a lot of the products and the things I talk about, I've actually got into the commercial world now. I'm still an adjunct professor at Southern Cross Uni and the University of Western Sydney. I'm not a full-time professor. I retired as a full-time professor in end of 2018. And but I'm still involved with research. But I will make products, but I'll also show you how you can do it yourself at home on your own. And that is my personal mission, which I've sort of crafted, is I want to co-create a culture of wellness that will infect the world with good health. And I really believe wellness can be contagious, just as much as illness can be contagious. And we can develop a culture, like the way we live in our life, and using good water and having hot and cold bathing and going to hot springs, or having organic food and doing our own ferments at home, and supporting bees and supporting local beekeepers, or having bees ourselves and getting good honey. These are all things that our ancestors did, and then we can revisit that, but using the ancient wisdom informed by modern science. So I'm not rejecting science. I'm still actively involved in high-end research, but I want to really validate these techniques that have been used for millennia, and not just something that's been used for 10 years and it's got a patent on it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the research I've done hasn't been well funded because there's no big commercial interest, but it's got an incredible impact because people can use them, these therapies themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I say it to my clients and friends, is that you've just got to become addicted to the feeling of being healthy or being well. And then once that hits, then anything less than that's not going to suffice. So you're always wanting to be driving towards that in any way possible. And if you've hit the right mark, then you're just wanting to find out all the free and optimal and aligned ways of actually becoming well, which is all the things you've just mentioned. Yeah.
And you also want to get your family and your friends involved. So that's what creates the culture. Because it's hard to be well in a vacuum by yourself. We're social creatures. And actually Lauren Burns, who was my PhD student, she's graduated now, so Dr. Lauren Burns, who's also a gold medalist in Taekwondo and Australian Hall of Famer. In her PhD research, we looked at world champion athletes who won multiple gold medals over multiple years. And she asked, how do you stay at the top of your world in your field for a long time? And it was a lot about mindset. But one of the things she came up with, which hadn't been well discussed, is social connection. You need a group of people around you that support you for who you are, not because you're a winner, but because you're you. And that social connection, I think, has been underplayed because it's not a commercial product. You can't sell social connection. We know social connection is one of the biggest factors for heart disease and stroke. So as a doctor, I can't prescribe you, go and make some friends. So it's actually been ignored by the medical world, but it's so important for who we are and how we operate in the world. And I think when we bring these practices into our lives and share them, that's when we create those connections and that culture, and that supports us as a buffer when stress arises.
Yeah, absolutely. And that loneliness has been spoken up a lot more since COVID. I think that really brought to light, and especially in the practice that I've noticed and with clients and friends and family and colleagues, and that it was a big impact on how quickly we could become disconnected and how that impacted health and how it still is impacting health and mental health.
I mean, I live in Melbourne. We were the most locked down city in the world, I think, and that was so vital. And I'm not sure if you know. So I've written these textbooks, but I'm more excited about my children. I've written children's books. So these books down here. And one of the things I was doing during COVID and the pandemic is trying to communicate information in a very simple way. And a lot of it's come out as poetry. So maybe we can, I've got a few poems we can share throughout the podcast. But on this topic now, what you can do at home in connection, there was one poem I came up with at the start of the pandemic. And I was actually writing down all the different things you could do that have scientific evidence that they improve immunity and reduce anxiety, and that you can do them at home with very little cost, training, or equipment.
Pardon the interruption, but before we return to our engaging conversation with Dr. Cohen, I'm excited to share something for those seeking tranquility amidst life's daily hustle. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Transcriptions and their thoughtful product, TroCalm. TroCalm is a precision-dosed, physician-formulated troche designed to help you combat stress and anxiety, quieten your mind, and foster calm, productivity, and focus. TroCalm's unique formulation includes 2 milligrams of CBG and 10 milligrams of CBD, both renowned for their relaxation and mood-enhancing properties. Additionally, it contains 50 milligrams of nicotinamide GABA, which can cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively than regular GABA supplements, and 100 milligrams of CABA to enhance GABA activity in the brain, encouraging a peaceful state. To experience the calming benefits for yourself, visit Transcriptions.com, and for our podcast listeners, use the promo code POD10 to receive a 10% discount on your order. So buckle up, back to the show, and hopefully feeling a little bit more centered and ready to absorb the wisdom of Dr. Cohen.
The brief I gave myself, what are all the things you can do? So during lockdown, what can people do at home to reduce fear and reduce anxiety and improve their immune system? And I came up with 50 different things you can do that all have research behind them, and it ended up as a poem. And it's only short, so I'd love to share it with you.
Go for it. I'd love to hear it. Now you tease me.
I call it the whirl of wellness. So I like the whirl of wellness, and it's a way to going from wired and tired to chilled and fulfilled, or from stressed and depressed to joyfully blessed. And it's all about, these techniques are really about connection. But the whirl of wellness. Hold someone's hand, gaze into their eyes. Go barefoot in nature, bask in sunrise. Choose a dance partner and go find your groove. Do Tai Chi or yoga, mindfully move. Share a massage. Enjoy healing touch. Focus on one thing and don't think too much. Make time for a hobby. Play chess, fly a kite. Make use of your hands, draw, paint, sew, or write. Help someone in need. Donate to a cause. Play games. Meditate. Read stuff from bookstores. Turn off your screens and get a good sleep. Declutter. Spark joy and love what you keep. Dig around in a garden. Pick up a guitar. Slip into a bathtub, sauna, or spa. Care for a pet. Take up a sport. Go on vacation and make your home a resort. Lie in a hammock, relieve pent-up stress. Relax and do nothing, and then do even less. Laugh out loud, share a joke, give someone a kiss, say a prayer, chant a mantra, and follow your bliss.
Wow, that is incredible. Yeah, it encompasses, as you say, all of those things. Well, there's so much you can be doing and what we need to be doing. And that's just being human. That's
Beautiful.
It's not rocket science. And actually on my website, I've got links to the scientific literature behind each of those 50 activities. So share literature if you're hitting a poem.
Yes, absolutely. And it's really something that's coming to light more is this rushing. And I won't touch on it too much, but it is, we are constantly on the move and moving from place to place, and we are not doing less enough. Not at all.
Actively doing nothing is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. In fact, if you go into yoga, the philosophy of yoga, or the asana practice of hatha yoga, is to get your body into a comfortable position so you can meditate, so you can actively do nothing.
Oh.
And there's a saying in sort of Eastern spiritual circles or wisdom traditions that the greatest movement comes from the stillest point. So if you can be totally still, where your mind, your body, and your breath are all unified, then that gives you the greatest power to act in the world as a complete being, being fully who you are when you bring your whole self to any action. And to cultivate those times when your mind, body, and breath are all united, and that can be during sport, it can be after meditation or a yoga session, or after hot and cold bathing. We have different ways to get there, but those moments really anchor the rest of our activity. And the more you can be completely, totally whole, and the word health comes from being whole. So the more whole you can be, and that when you're actively doing nothing, that stillness, that point of absolute homeostasis, it's the same for everybody. That's in again, wisdom traditions. Namaste says, the divine in me sees the divine in you, when I'm in that place in me and you're in that place in you, we are one. And that's that place of stillness. So getting to that place is one of the most powerful things we can do for our health, but it's also one of the most powerful things you can do to be active. And jugglers know that, martial artists know that, ballerinas know that if they can have their center of gravity still, the point just below their navel, they can do the most somersaults or the biggest kicks or bounces, or keep the most balls in the air. So that cultivating that stillness is something really valuable that we can do in our lives. And I think a lot of people are scared of being bored, so we doom scroll, and we want to be active, and rather than having something, let's go in and just have some quiet time.
Absolutely. It's uncomfortable to be still, which is mind-boggling, because then it's also uncomfortable to be constantly doing as well. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And again, we could talk about this for so long, but I do want to dive into some specifics with you. Now, you mentioned that what has just sparked my interest and fascinated me, and I did read this about the hot springs and being the medical director, and I haven't had the privilege of being to Peninsula Hot Springs yet, but I was almost there, but COVID stopped me coming. But I have just been in Japan, and I've been enjoying their onsens at the start of the year. So talk me through this beautiful science of hot springs.
So hot springs are nature's gift to humanity.
Yeah,
and Japan has probably the most sophisticated bathing culture in the world.
They do.
That's a place to go, and they've ritualized it and made it so, and they've got incredibly beautiful physical environment. They got the natural hot water, and they cultivate that zen, that peaceful physical environment, and they have the food and the clogs and the kimonos and that whole culture that's built around hot springs. Water is one of the most powerful healers, and we can do a deep dive in water. I won't go right into the elements of water now because we'll get distracted. But the water has always been an incredible healer. Where 99.9% of our molecules are water, 2/3 by volume or by weight, but that 99 if you count our molecules. So water is the operating system for our consciousness. And then using hot and cold and temperature, and all life has to survive within a thermal window of heat and cold. And if you get hot for too long, you die. If you get cold for too long, you die. So we live in this window, but it's a really powerful way of stressing your body with a life-threatening stress that you're fully in your control to adjust. And in Japan, they have some crazy practices there. They do 47-degree bathing as a spiritual practice, which 45 degrees, most people couldn't even go in. Most people, 42 is too hot. But 47 is crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, if you put a child,
that's hot.
if you put a child in 47 degrees, they will die.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it requires a whole lot of effort. But what it does do, it puts you in this life and death threat. So it stresses your body, and then you can practice relaxing being under stress.
Oh.
Just like in yoga, you do the splits or you do a stretch. You get to a point where your body says, hey, that's enough. Just if you're going to do further, you're going to hurt yourself. But at that point where it's a little bit uncomfortable, you can then just breathe and practice being relaxed while you're stressed.
No.
And you can do that with heat, but you can also do that with cold. And going from one to the other, and just like in yoga, you'll stretch one way and then you'll stretch the other way. So you do, the flexors and extensors. And then just like in yoga, at the end of the yoga class, you do a shavasana, you do the relaxation, and that's where you anchor the benefits. So, in a hot spring, you can do all three. You can do the heat and you can actually stress your body and get to the point where you're comfortably uncomfortable. And I call that the point of forced mindfulness. When your body says, hey, it's too hot, you need to get out. Just like your body says, hey, don't stretch anymore, you're going to hurt yourself. And at that point, you can just stop and take a few relaxed breaths so you can relax while you're stressed. And then you can go the other way. You go out and do a cold plunge and you get cold. But then in a hot spring, it's a thermoneutral temperature, 37 degrees, 36.5 to 37.5, you can totally relax and then practice being relaxed while you're relaxed. And that's when you actively do nothing, because you don't even have to adjust your temperature. Your body's had the stress and it's had a workout, and then you can come back and center yourself. So hot springs do that. And I mean, the water itself is healing, and there's a lot of research, and I wouldn't say controversial, but it's not that well systematized, because every hot spring is different.
Yeah.
Or the mineral combination is different. So there's sulfur springs and lithium springs and calcium springs and iron springs. And so there's different effects from the minerals. Then there's the effects from the temperature. And again, some of the springs are really hot and some are warm and some are cool and some are cold. You've got this range of temperature, you've got this range of mineral composition that absorbs through your skin, and they've got different benefits. And so hot springs are nature's healing places. And throughout the world, that's been recognized pretty much through every tradition. And very often I know in American Indian traditions, the hot springs, and I think in Europe as well, hot springs were places where during a war, they'd take their wounded, but you wouldn't fight at the hot spring. So both sides would take their wounded down to the springs, but it was a peace zone. You wouldn't fight there. That's where you go to recover. And they were considered sacred and considered, nature's gift of healing. Wow. And, the Romans conquered Europe, going from one hot spring town to the other and setting up hot springs down. The Romans had a great, it was a slave-based society, but bathing they had a great culture of wellness. Bathing was part of their culture. Hot springs are a fantastic venue. And now I've been friends with Charles Davidson, who Peninsula Hot Springs, and we have a share of Maruya Hot Springs together. I'm part owner of this incredible hot spring in New Zealand together. So it's been part of my world for 24 years now.
Wow.
And it's only in the last couple of years the hot springs have been sort of doing well enough that they can actually employ me to be their medical director. And I've been training, they have wellness hosts there, about a dozen of them. And 3 or 4 times a day, they'll run these fire and ice sessions where they'll take people through a sauna and ice bath experience. And we've actually just created the curriculum. We're just working on the content now, but we've created a curriculum for a full 1-year diploma of hydrothermal wellness.
Wow, that's
so this is going to be a 1-year diploma for sort of like a personal trainer, yoga teacher level qualification to really give you therapy. So it's going to be to treat disease. That'll require more, but it'll be able to assess somebody and take them through these extreme experiences of a sauna or a steam room, an ice bath, breathing practices, forest bathing, hydration practices, using essential oils, mud and clay. So to really guide you through that experience and take you through it safely, which is often a very emotional experience. I ran a session with some of the staff a couple of months ago, and they're doing 4 of these a day. And they were saying that, maybe a dozen people they would take through the experiences. But after the fire and ice sessions, they're getting hugs from all their clients, all the people are taking through. It's like a 1-hour experience. But people have gone through these really intense emotions, and they've faced a challenge that they were a bit nervous about, going to an ice water or spending time in the heat. And that it's quite liberating and empowering to know you can actually conquer that fear, and you start to become the master of your own physiology. And so hot springs are, they're a big part of my world. I'm off to America on the weekend, but I'm actually landing. A friend of mine owns Glen Ivy Hot Springs. I've got a couple of nights there when I land. And other hot springs between San Francisco and LA. So I try to include that as part of my my general routine, and I'm super lucky that I've made that part of my life, my job.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I think, as you were saying about the emotions that come through, it's a healing, it's almost a detoxing of emotions, and it's also that strength and ability for your courage to come through, but it's a connector, because then you feel that you have this deeper connection with those who are around you. So it's really bringing that community sense of these places. And I find that's the biggest, what I get out of doing ice bath and, the contrast therapy, as I call it, where I'll do a sauna or an ice bath and then a hot spring, and in Japan, we're doing onsens, and I was like making sure I could get as cold water as possible to make sure I was doing contrast in there that we didn't have available to us. So
there's like an emotional detox, but there's also the other bit, because when you're in the heat, you're vasodilated, so all the blood's going through your muscles and your superficial skin, and you're not making, your muscles aren't working, so you're not making new waste products, but you're flushing those waste products away from your muscles. Then when you go to the cold, you vasoconstrict and forcing all that blood through your core, and goes through your liver and your kidneys, and that detoxifies. So there's a whole detoxification. There's a whole cardiovascular effect where your heart has to pump harder and you're sweating, and because your blood vessels are open, there's more pipes for your blood to go through, so your heart has to work harder. So it's a cardiovascular workout while you're relaxed with other people.
Right.
So there's so many layers of benefits you get from this, social relaxation, enjoyable experience.
Oh, and again, like you said before, with the differences of springs across the world, is this the mineral changes, the composition changes of the water. That just it blows my mind that nature can be like this. And I was trying to find more information out while I was in Japan just itself, because there is different parts of different areas that have the different onsens, and they all are for different purposes. And the ones where we were staying were more rich in silica. So it was more of the beauty onsens, and there was others that were more rich in sulfur. And then there was, so they have and they know the different areas that they need to go to. It's just incredible, underutilized in our world, and we have totally come away from these bathing practices, that as well as so many others.
Well, I think before the Peninsula Hot Springs opened 20 years ago now, and almost 20 years ago, there weren't commercial hot springs in Australia. There was a couple there was a couple of little places, and what we've just started to realise is the whole Great Artesian Basin, which is 25% of the Australian continent, has hot water underneath it. And last month, the Peninsula Hot Spring Group, where I work, they've just opened Cunnamulla Hot Springs in southwest Queensland. So it's 9 hours west of Brisbane. So it's in the middle of nowhere. It's the back of Burke, literally. And so they've just tapped into the Artesian Basin. They've got natural hot water coming up there, and that's just open. It's on the Grey Nomad Trail, so it's becoming this little outback town now has a $11 million hot spring that the federal government paid for. It's owned by the local council, and Peninsula Hot Spring Group are going to operate that, or we are operating it. It's open now. But there's an opportunity there to create a whole wellness community, because once you when you have a mine, you have all these staff and everything have to come to service the mine, but it's not really a wellness-oriented community. But if you have a hot spring, then all the ancillary businesses that open up around that have this great social and economic and environmental benefit for the region. And I think that's a lot of hopes for regional development around wellness communities rather than around extracting something from the land.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did a grey nomad, but when we had babies. So I did a grey nomad journey, and we went to Mataranka. And I remember going to Mataranka at the hot springs there, but it was very small, very tiny, and you don't see anything else. It's desert, and then it's like green trees. Oh, we're here. Okay.
There's places in Australia where it's free. It just comes out of the ground, and you can just go there and camp there and bathe.
Yeah, that's incredible. But it sort of segueing into, as you mentioned, sort of this. I want to talk about water with you. It's a huge passion of mine as well. I've been researching and have been, flagging the water issue that we have and quality water. And we've had Nicole on the podcast as well. So we've talked about toxicities, environmental. So I definitely want to touch on water, but then I want to go towards some of the policies, because I know you've had big input and say and discovery into things like chlorine and other components. So if we may go into that, because I think that's a huge thing that needs to be made known to so many people.
And it's still not resolved. I'm still working actively on that. Still not resolved. And we have this issue where I think it was just after the First World War, where actually chlorine then was used as a weapon of war. It was used to kill people. And I think the Battle of Flanders, 5,000, mostly Canadians, were killed by chlorine gas. And when you read the description, it's the most horrible death. But it was after the war, when cholera and typhoid were having outbreaks, they started chlorinating water. And as a public health measure, because you don't want cholera and typhoid in these big water systems. However, that was before we knew anything about the microbiome. We thought bacteria were bad, let's just kill everything. And we had this war mentality of let's use chemicals to kill germs, and it was this adversarial approach. And we've retained that for 100 years now, more than 100 years. And it's actually having a huge impact on so many aspects of our life that we don't even realize. And there's this tension, I think, between the public health system and the governments who want to have, safe water, and they don't want to have epidemic of diseases, or individuals that they want to have clean water and be as natural as possible and healthy as possible. Yeah. But even the research hasn't been that well done. So I have this theory that drinking less poison is good for you. It's a radical theory. But it's really hard to actually demonstrate that, because the research is difficult to do. Although there was some really great research done in the late 1990s where they had people bathe, first they had them drink chlorinated water, and they were measuring the disinfection byproducts, like chloroform, or the trihalomethane, the halogens that are really toxic, and they measure them in blood. And what they found is when you drink chlorinated water, these disinfection byproducts don't appear in your blood. And that's because they first pass through your liver. So they smash your liver. It's not great for your liver, but your liver cleans them out of your blood. And then they did a bath where your skin wasn't touching the water. They put you in a little wetsuit, like a non-porous wetsuit, but you just breathe the bath water. And just from the chlorine's volatile, so you breathe that chlorine gas coming out of just the hot water of the bath, and immediately you got a spike in all the disinfection byproducts. And then they did a similar thing where you breathe fresh air and just had the water touching your skin. And again, you had this big spike, because when you breathe or get absorption through your skin, you bypass the liver. So those disinfection byproducts, these quite toxic chemicals, go straight into your bloodstream. And I knew about that, and with my patients, I still do a tiny bit of medical practice. I've always recommended getting a whole house water filter, because you don't want to bathe in chlorinated water, and especially even hot showers are one of the worst things, because when water's hot, the chlorine is volatile, and you just breathe it in. So I ended up starting a water filter company. Just because I looked at all the different filters, and I used to tell my patients, get a whole house water filter. They used to say, which one? I'd say, well, it's complicated. Yeah. And they tell me, well, you've got a PhD, 2 PhDs and a medical degree. If you can't work it out, how are we supposed to work it out? And Nicole tells me, I was working with Nicole and saying, what is the best filter? And I came up with the criteria that I wanted, but it didn't exist. So I ended up creating that. And my company's beautifulwater.co. Awesome. And we have whole house filters and over the counter and under the sink on the counter. But also tell people, if you want to have a hot bath and you don't have a whole house filter, turn on the hot water, make it hotter than you'd normally have, put the fan on and wait 20 minutes. And the chlorine will outgas from the hot water. The hotter the better, because the hotter it is, the more volatile the chlorine will be. And you need to have the fan on, otherwise you'll just chlorinate all the air in your bathroom. And then when it's cooled down a little bit and the chlorine's outgassed, then you can have a relatively chlorine-free bath without even having a filter. Or you can use your kettle and you can evaporate the chlorine out and do it that way. Although knowing that if you've got the kettle on in the room, you're going to evaporate chlorine into the air of your room.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I was going to say about filters. Is there's filters and then there's filters, and to have that conversation with clients and the public is a tricky rabbit hole to go down.
There's all these commercial interests and there's sort of multi-level programs and stuff, and people are trying to get commissions on filters and stuff. And it is a rabbit hole. And one of the things I did a lot of research before I sort of created my filter brand, because it's not something I really wanted to do. I had other things to do, but I ended up doing that. But I actually spoke at the International Conference on the Physics, Chemistry and Biology of Water, which is held every year. Gerald Pollack, who wrote the book, The Fourth Phase of Water, he runs that conference. He's fantastic. Yeah. People haven't seen the little TEDx talk on the fourth phase of water. It's really worth watching. Yeah. So I went down that rabbit hole of structured water and how does that all work. But I also spent a lot of time with Indigenous elders. So I became quite good friends with Grandma Agnes Baker Pilgrim, who was the chairwoman of the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers. She was in her 90s, but she used to say that she would speak for the water, and we're all water babies, and we have to give thanks to water. We have to hold our water sources sacred and have a good feeling for where our water comes from. And that's been echoed by so many other wisdom elders and people I've spoken to. And there's no filter or anything that has any respect for that. And I wanted to build that into to what I was offering. And because most people's water comes from a water tank or a meter that's got a ticker over that just tells you how much you have to pay. There's no good feeling. And I tell people, just go write I love you, or put a picture of your guru or some good feeling on your tank or on your water filter. But I actually created a design where we put a lot of thought into the beautiful water logo, which looks like a raindrop. It also looks like an Emoto water crystal and flow forms, and it's got all these sacred geometry in it. And the sacred geometry of Metatron's cube, which has the 12 platonic solids, and the lines of that sacred geometry is actually text that says, I love you, I respect you, I thank you, I bless you, I am you, over and over again. So it's got subliminal blessings in the actual design and it's actually a beautiful design. So with the aesthetics and the intention, I think, is an important thing, and most filter companies just don't care about that. So, they're a plastic or they're a metal box that the plumber will come and wire up, but you don't really have a good feeling towards it. Yeah, I want to have all the technology as good as possible, but also that intention imbued into the product. So, ended up creating that.
Incredible. And Moto, the book on the water crystals and the formation.
Water, yeah.
It's just beautiful. And that it's so important. And this is what I absolutely love about you, Marc, is that you bring in the science, the data, the exactness with the magic, with the way that we are actually and where, how we're living or what we should be living like. And why can't you have both? And this is the separation that really has irked me for ever since I've been in this career, in this world, possibly, because I treated animals with natural medicine. I'm like, why can't we have like vets and all this coming together? Like, why can't you all suggest it? So it's something that's always baffled me, the fact that we've got all this availability. Why aren't you interested in it? And why are you interested in the other side? It's that
a lot of it's been marginalized. Homeopathy's been marginalized by the mainstream pharmaceutical world and corporate world because it's got something information is carried by water. But then people like Lou Montagna, who he passed away, unfortunately, but he discovered the HIV virus. But I met him and he spoke at some of these conferences on the physics, chemistry and biology of water. And he did experiments on how water can transmit information. And even Emoto's work has been sort of marginalized and criticized. Yeah. But when you talk about structured water, Gerald Pollack's work on the fourth phase of water, he's a hardcore scientist. He's at the University of Washington in Seattle. And when you talk about structured water, you have this exclusion zone layer, the EZ water layer, next to a membrane or next to a interface, and you can actually create that through natural process. Steiner and Victor Schauberger using flow forms. So this is what water naturally does when it flows down a hill. It forms vortexes, and you get this aeration effect, and you get this structuring effect where the minerals become more dissolved. So the filters that I sell, they don't they don't use electricity or anything to alkalinize water, but they force the water into vortexes. So it outgasses carbon dioxide, which naturally alkalinizes the water because carbon dioxide dissolved is an acid. So you get rid of the carbon dioxide, it makes it alkaline. But it also dissolves the calcium crystal. So instead of being calcite, which is a brick-shaped molecule, and that then builds up and forms scale. So the white film you get on your shower screen or in your glassware, that is from calcite as a brick phase. But then when you make a water vortex, it turns that into aragonite, which is more of a diamond shaped. And the diamond shapes can't build up, so they just sort of flow over each other. So the minerals are still there, but they don't form scale. And that means if you have structured water like that, plants grow better. If you're making bread, you get moister bread. If you're making concrete, the concrete's stronger. If you're using water to clean, it cleans easier. And if you're using a bit of detergent, the detergent will lather much better. So you need less detergent and you don't get a detergent film on your surfaces, but also on your skin and your hair. So it's a simple thing to do. And I do sell these vortex devices, which aren't even filtered. They just create a vortex through the water and stop scale buildup. And that's great if you've got hard water.
Perth is one of the worst where I live.
You got a lot of minerals there. And I've had some customers there where there's a lot of iron in the water. And that can be quite hard to remove because it changes the way the water actually works. So you get staining of things, but it tastes different. It doesn't. You can't cook as easily. Things taste better. And what I've realised, being in this business for a few years now, is most people have never actually experienced good water.
Yeah.
Or not for an extended length of time. But once you've had a whole house filter, or you've been somewhere where there's been natural water without chlorine for a couple of weeks, your biome changes and your taste buds change. And I know myself and a lot of people I talk to, I'd rather be dehydrated than drink chlorinated tap water because I can feel that it's doing me harm. Whereas if I have, I'm having kombucha right now, but if I have water that's been properly filtered and structured, I feel it going. It feels healthy when I drink it.
Absolutely.
And you never want to go back. I don't want to bathe in chlorinated water anymore. I'd rather sort of wait and get the opportunity. When I travel, I use the hotel room trick of making a hot bath, waiting a while, and then going in that, rather than having a shower that I'm going to breathe chlorine.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many things that you can do, and that's like really good tips. But yeah, I agree. My kids now are, they've always had filtered water because I have, my oldest is 11 now. So, and I've been into this for a very long time. And so when we go out and someone will serve them the tap water, they're like,
Yeah.
this is disgusting. I'm like,
my kids are the same. Yeah. My kids are 22 and 20 now, but they've grown up on filtered water and they drink a lot of water. They love it. But then they'll go out and it's like, I can't drink this.
Yeah, you're a bit stuck when you have other water sources, but you try to find.
People call me a water snob, but you can't help it. Once you've experienced the benefit of having good water, you don't want to go back.
No. Once you know, you can't unlearn. And I think that's the big problem and the benefit of being exposed to so much of this information is that, well, now you know and you can't go back at all.
and the effect it has on your skin. So there's been some recent research where they've actually studied the skin microbiome. And, when I went to medical school, we were taught the skin has a surface area of 1.8 square meters, about the size of a single bed. And they use that for calculating burns, percentage and things. But then an article in Nature, I think it was 2021, so fairly recently, where they reanalyzed that and they said, wait a minute, you have about 3 million sweat glands and sebaceous glands. So every time the glands go down and up, that increases the surface area. And it's at the base of these glands where natural oils are secreted. And those natural oils protect you from sun damage. They protect your skin from drying out. They also feed good bacteria that protect you from bad bacteria. So if you're having chlorinated water that you're bathing in, you're oxidizing those oils, you're disrupting your good bacteria on your skin, and you're opening it up to pathogens. So skin dries out, you're more likely to get sun damage, you're more likely to get wrinkles, and your skin will prematurely age. and you're more likely to get skin infections or rashes or eczemas, and those sort of conditions become worse.
Exactly.
That's just from stripping the natural oils and the natural microbiome of our skin. And then think about our gut. We're still learning about the gut microbiome. I've been talking to some of the companies, and they say for every 6 people that they measure, do a biome measurement, they discover a brand new bacteria that's never been discovered before.
Yeah.
So we're still learning that most of the inflammation in our body comes from our gut. Most of our immune system starts in our gut. What we've done is we've waged war on our microbiome. So we have antibiotics, we have chlorine in our water, we have pesticides like glyphosate, which kills bacteria in our food, and it's pretty much in all food now. And we don't eat living foods anymore. If you think about our ancestors, before refrigeration, and most cuisines would have something living with every meal. A bit of sauerkraut, a bit of kimchi, yogurt, pickles. In Japan, they have all the pickles. Every meal, you get a little side of pickles, something that's fermented and alive with every meal.
Exactly.
We're eating dead food now, and most of the food we eat is actually fermented. So bread and cheese and wine and beer and tea and chocolate and coffee, these are all fermented foods, but they're dead ferments. The living bacteria aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
I really encourage people to make your own sauerkraut, make kimchi, make kefir, kombucha, yogurt. Have something. You need like a couple of tablespoons full, with every meal. But have something alive with every meal, and you'll start to rebuild your gut microbiome. And it's not as if it's the bacteria in the sauerkraut that's going to colonize your gut, but it's adding life. So if you're a gardener, the best thing you can do for your garden is add organic material. It's not you're trying to grow that. That's adding that organic material is the best nutrition for what's there. And what's there will work itself out. So it's the same with our guts. We want to add good organic material in the form of living microbes that are part of our food, and then that will rebuild your gut microbiome. And that builds your immune system. It reduces inflammation. And again, it changes who you are, literally, and it changes your taste buds.
Yeah.
You don't want to eat crap food anymore.
No.
Not interested in junk food. And I look at a piece of junk food now, it's like, it's not even, I don't see it as food.
Well, it's not registering anymore. It's like, well, that's not going to do anything for me. But like you said right at the start, these things also you can do yourself. You don't have to buy these things. You can create these things too. And
ask your grandmother. She'll tell you. Ethnic background, most grandmothers will tell you how to do it. And then there's so many websites on how to do fermentation. And it's actually quite inexpensive. I mean, you buy a big cabbage for not much, and you got sauerkraut for 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to make sure that it's all down, because I did one and it grew a big layer of mold. It was impressive.
You got to get the fluid. Make sure it's all the liquid there.
Pardon the interruption again, but we have something thrilling for you. We have Home Hope's new online cohort starting on April 22nd. So joining this next cohort is an exclusive opportunity to learn directly from the faculty and the phenomenal Dr. Ted Achikoso himself. This is not just a course, but a journey to mastery with supportive community and faculty guiding you every step of the way. So metabolomics or clinical metabolomics is coined the stethoscope of the 21st century for good reason. Here we learn how to pinpoint subtle toxicities and nutrient imbalances and their corrections to offer unparalleled health optimization practices to and for your clients. What an offer. So here with the cohort, we have weekly interaction sessions with the Home Hope faculty for each lesson that you're taking in the 12-week course. In-depth additional resources, monthly clinical case reviews, small group learning, and an exclusive membership that really gives you fantastic benefits for learning and implementation of metabolomics. So join the next cohort. For any information around this is homehope.org. And for any of the other courses, if you're ready to embark, visit homehope.org and use the promo code podcast10 for a 10% discount on the metabolomics module on its own or any other certification on Home Hope.
But absolutely, simple things like that, and I also have that in my each protocol that I send clients, is that you have to have at least 1 tablespoon of something like sauerkraut or kimchi per day, and it's so simple and easy. It's not not necessarily.
Yeah, so that's where I created this range here. So I've got a friend of mine who has a kombucha company.
Yeah.
And in the pandemic, or just before I was still a professor. So before the pandemic, he used to say, "Oh, look, kombucha fixes everything." I said, "Really? Where's the research?" And I looked at the research, and there were 300 papers on kombucha, but there were none on humans. It was all on animals or in the laboratory.
Yeah.
And I was a research professor, so I know how to do research. Let's get a grant and we'll do some research. And we actually did the first ever human clinical trial of kombucha that was published last year.
Incredible.
We did that at the University of Sydney at Jenny Brand Miller's lab, and that's where they really invented the glycemic index.
Yep.
And we showed that if you have kombucha compared to diet soft drink or soda water with a standard meal, that after the meal, you get a reduction in the blood sugar spike by 20% and a reduction in the insulin by 15%. So we published that at the start of last year, and then the second human study of kombucha was published later last year, in about October, I think. It was done at Georgetown University, and they gave kombucha every day to 220 mils to diabetic patients.
Wow.
And we showed that if you had the kombucha compared to a control, that you had a control of blood sugar, HbA1c was better, just having a living ferment every day. So we did that research. So I said to my buddy Dean, I want to go into business with you. This is amazing, this research, no one's done it, but I want to have something that's shelf stable because kombucha needs to be refrigerated. And we worked out if we ferment it for 6 months, there's no sugar or alcohol left. You end up with vinegar. And kombucha vinegar is actually more potent than apple cider vinegar. And that's because green tea has more polyphenols than apples.
Yeah.
So think about, and the apple cider vinegar is pretty well known as being like the wonder kitchen ingredient. There's so many things. Apple cider vinegar is amazing. Well, kombucha vinegar is even more amazing. And it's super easy to make because you make kombucha and neglect it for 6 months. Just leave it. It will turn to vinegar naturally.
Yeah.
If you want to revive it, you just add some more sweet tea in it. You can revive it and it will keep growing. But what we do, we get this kombucha vinegar, and then because I've got all this experience with the textbooks, we add leaves, roots, flowers, fruits, and fungi. So we do the whole spread of the plant world, and we select them based on their properties. So we have one blend for your gut, and one for your brain, and one for your hormones, and one for detox, and one for the immune system. So we've designed these vinegars, and you just need a tablespoon with a meal. You can splash it on your veggies. You can put it in water and just drink it straight. It's such an easy thing to do, and people can make it themselves. Again, I'm happy to sell you. Extremely Alive is our brand, extremelyalive.com.au. So these are amazing vinegars. I love just putting it in my water and just drinking it. But you can make it yourself. It's so easy. Getting all the leaves, roots, flowers, fruits, and fungi, making it organic and doing that's a bit more work. But making kombucha vinegar is super easy, and having just a splash with your meal. And there's a lot of research now on blood sugar control with vinegar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just having some vinegar at the start of a meal, you'll reduce the blood sugar spike at the end of the meal. And controlling blood sugar spike is so important for everything, hormonal regulation, for inflammation, for skin conditions, or pretty much our body runs on glucose. So having an even supply of glucose is so important. It's such an easy thing to do. And
absolutely.
And then last year, the plot got even thicker because I got involved with a Manuka honey company. And most people don't realise the world's most potent Manuka honey comes from Australia, not from New Zealand.
Oh.
So New Zealand's got one species of leptosperm, the Manuka bush, Leptosperm sciparium. Australia has 87 species, and 15 of those are bioactive. They have the DHA in the nectar that turns into MgO, the methyl glyoxal in the honey, which gives it its rating. So I'm really excited about honey as a ancient future medicine. Yeah. Then you probably know as a naturopath, but I actually didn't know. And it was funny because I wrote these. I'm supposed to be an expert on natural medicine. I wrote these textbooks. All the naturopaths know that I wrote the textbooks.
You never know anything, do we?
But I never really knew about oxymals. So oxymals means acid honey.
Yeah.
And that's what Hippocrates used to prescribe.
Yes.
If you look up, he said, everyone knows he said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. But they just leave it there. But what he actually prescribed were oxymals. So both honey and vinegar are medicines in their own right. They're both foods in their own right, but they're synergistic when you add them together. And you get this sweet and sour combination. So the honey's sweet and the vinegar's sour. And only last year, it wasn't done by me, there was a research group that looked at Manuka honey and they diluted it to the point where it wasn't bactericidal anymore. Then they took these different vinegars. They didn't use kombucha vinegar. They used grape, white vinegar, pomegranate vinegar, date vinegar, and apple cider vinegar. And they diluted it then to the point where they weren't bactericidal anymore. And they took the two dilutions that had no effect. Together, they were bactericidal. So they showed there's a synergistic effect between the honey and the vinegar in terms of antibacterial effect. And they showed that the more polyphenols in the vinegar, the better the effect. And mind you, Manuka honey is known for its MGO level. That's the number they give you. The higher the number, the more expensive it is.
Yeah.
And I've been researching that, and I've been talking to the University of Southern Queensland, have a whole honey lab. And MGO is also a proxy measure for polyphenol content. So the higher the MGO, the more polyphenols are in the honey. And these polyphenols are these phenolic compounds are these ringed molecules, and polyphenols means lots of these ringed molecules, but things like resveratrol and quercetin and the flavonoids, these are all polyphenols that are really the plant's immune system. They help the plant secondary metabolites from being invaded by pests and the sun and all of that. But they're also really good for us. So the more polyphenols we have, and red wine is famous for resveratrol, and so in Manuka honey, you have these really high polyphenols. In green tea, you have really high polyphenols, as I say, more so than apples. So when you mix the Manuka honey with green tea vinegar, kombucha vinegar, you have this incredibly potent oxymol, which is super delicious.
Yeah, but
the vinegars are nice. I mean, they're sour. I can drink them straight. But most people, you sort of pack her up. But you mix it with honey, and it's like drinking a cordial, a syrup.
Wow.
And you don't need much. And then you can add that to soda water, add that to still water, just a little bit. And you can, it's like a soft drink that you'd be happy to give your kids.
And
it's this ancient future medicine. It's this ancient form of medicine that can become the future of medicine that, again, I'm happy to, I'm creating products now. So I'm going to Expo West on the weekend to America to bring these products to the States. And we're still doing product development and stability testing and things. But you can do that at home. And it's really good for people to get good honey. So supermarket honey is not usually good honey. They say that 30% of the honey in the world is fake. But making a relationship with your local beekeeper, getting good honey, getting apple cider vinegar or making your own kombucha vinegar, and then mixing the honey and vinegar together. It's just, a lot of people do that for salad dressing, and it's delicious. But that becomes an oxymol you can add other herbs to, or just use that in your water, on your salads, whenever you want like a little boost. It's really medicinal, and it's probiotic. So it's got probiotic effects. It's got all the polyphenol antioxidant, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory effects, and it's super delicious. And I love things that you want to be able to do it every day. You want to make that part of it. And I talk about creating a culture of wellness. Well, there's literally a culture. It's literally the bacteria and yeast forms a culture. The symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast is SCOBY.
Yeah,
having culture in your life is a great thing.
Absolutely, in multiple ways. And it like you said, taste is important when you're introducing this to a culture that's not used to having these sorts of medicines. And if it tastes good and it's good for you, then, oh my goodness, this is incredible.
It is. And one of the things I've also sort of discovered with myself and with my patients is that we can play with our taste. A lot of people have sweet tooths. And, in our modern world, we have a lot of sweet, spicy and salty foods.
Yeah.
We don't have that much bitter. And if we do have bitter, we get it from chocolate or coffee. In fact, I was reading something a couple of days ago saying that 90% of the polyphenols, the antioxidants in the American diet, come from coffee. Because coffee is really high in polyphenols, or chocolate. Coffee or chocolate. Yeah. Marc Cohen was talking about it.
Well, they have coffee, otherwise, what would they have?
and coffee and chocolate are both really bitter.
Yeah.
But if you, as a naturopath, we need to get a bitters from plants.
Yes.
A lot of herbs are bitter.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to mix the bitter with the sweet and the sour. So making oxymols, the honey vinegar combinations with some bitter herbs. So whether it's, you can use coffee, you can use chocolate, but andrographis or dandelion, other bitter herbs.
Mm.
If you have people with sweet cravings, if you increase the bitterness in their diet, it balances their sweet cravings. Their sweet cravings go away. And that's a Chinese medicine thing. Sweet, salty, spicy, sour, and bitter are the 5 flavors, and we need a balance of those flavors. And if you're having salty food or sweet food, you notice you're craving one sort, you can actually balance that out by changing the flavors of the rest of your diet. So, and that is a really powerful way of reducing sweet cravings without having to work at it. You just have some more bitter, and then naturally you don't need the sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fascinating part about, obviously when I was learning, it was all about the bitter receptors in the body. And there are so many more than we actually believe there had been. And they are impacting us in multiple degrees. And that's why culturing this sort of taste preference or taste requirement and balance, like you say, with the bitters really has far-reaching health benefits, far beyond what we've discussed.
I mean, in Europe, they'll have an aperitif before a meal, and things like Jägermeister and these little bitter, digestives. They call it a digestive. To know that you have some bitter and it sort of balances that, it helps with digestion. The bitter flavor actually opens up your palate.
Yes.
So if you have bitters before a meal, you enjoy your meal more because you get more flavor out of it. It prepares your liver for digestion, so you actually digest your food better. It'll reduce the blood sugar spike after the meal, and it will balance sugar cravings. So having some bitters before a meal is it's a natural thing that's been used again in ancient times that we're now rediscovering the reasons for using modern science.
Absolutely, ancient and future medicine. I am going to start using that. As well, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
This is Marc's term. Marc, I'm not joking here, but I could literally just stay here talking to you all day. Yeah. But we have things to do other than talk about these wonderful things. But I think a part 2 would be a fantastic idea because I didn't get to half the things that I really wanted to discuss with you. And if you didn't mind, we could have you back on the show.
I'd love to. I love talking about these topics, and I find that I love talking about my brands because of my own journey. So I'm now going into the commercial world, but in my own philosophy, I'm developing products, but I'm also developing the skills to show people they can do it themselves.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can finish up with another very brief poem that I wrote again at the start of the pandemic, and I call this, and it's super simple. I call this the recipe for wellness. And it's super simple. The recipe for wellness: bathe in beautiful water, prepare delicious food, make the most of every breath, dance through every mood, tend the soil beneath your feet, embrace sunshine from above, share your gifts with all the world, and fill your life with love.
Beautiful. Oh, just perfect. And how did you know that I was going to ask you, and how do we live smarter, not harder? And that is all in a poem for you. Oh, you're such a treat, Marc. And I so appreciate your time that you spent with me today. And I really do hope we get to chat again about all this plus more. And really good luck for your trip to America. And I look forward to hearing how that goes. And also reach out if you need any contacts, because I can pass all of that around for you as well.
Sure, I'm going to be overwhelmed, but thank you so much. I love talking about this, so thank you for the invitation. Super happy to come back and chat more. We can share a lot. I think we went quite wide today. Maybe we can go deeper another time. But
we can go sections of deeper next time.
Great.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks so much, Marc, and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Jodi.
So thank you so much, Marc, for coming on and sharing his remarkable insights with us today. And his fusion of ancient wisdom and contemporary science offers a fresh perspective that resonates deeply in today's fast-paced world. And I really didn't want this episode to end. I wanted to ask Marc so much more. So I think a part 2 is definitely necessary. There is so much that Marc has to tell us, and I want to discuss with him as well. So really today we touched briefly in big scheme of things of and embracing the ancient future medicine and incorporating these timeless practices with modern health strategies. So it's a beautiful topic to be diving into. So if today's discussion with Professor Cohen has inspired you, delve deeper into the topics we've touched upon, and perhaps even start creating your own culture of wellness and spreading that far and wide. And for more enlightening discussions and to continue exploring the vast terrains of health and wellness, be sure to join us again on the Smarter Not Harder podcast. So this is Jodi Duval signing off and reminding you that the simplest changes can make the biggest impact on your health. And until next time, take care and keep thriving on your path to true health.